Staff, my name is Robin Ferraro. I'm 32 years old, and we're filming today from Easton, Pennsylvania, the home of my family. Easton is about an hour and some change outside of New York City and 45 minutes from Philadelphia. So it's in the northeastern part of the state. I grew up being the middle child. I have an older brother, a younger sister, and food was definitely a part of my life. Very traditional Italian household, lots of gatherings around the kitchen table, and so I developed an interest for it throughout my childhood and really started applying it most recently about 2 years ago. I lived for about 10 years in Washington, D.C., where I spent most of my time working in various aspects of business in the technology arena, in business development, finding business partnerships for other companies. While the work was great for paying the bills, it was just never really gratifying from a creative standpoint. So about 2 years ago, I started taking some recreational type cooking classes where I learned some basic skills and just have really developed an interest ever since then. Spent a lot of time entertaining my friends. I'm known for my snack plates. We're big snackers in this house, so that's carried over to my adult life. And then I got into catering about a year and a half ago from a sales side, applying my business background to food and cooking through a sales perspective in event coordination and things like that. And while that was great exposure in the city of Washington, where I was working for a very small but reputable company with a great Rolodex, it was unfulfilling from a creative standpoint once again. So here I am taking the summer off in my parents' household, getting it together and trying to develop a business plan and do something for myself, something that's going to make me happy. My parents run a business out of their house downstairs, so today I'm going to be making lunch for their employees, sticking with the Italian theme, using original recipes that have been in my family since I can remember. Kind of a go green theme, if you will. We're using some leafy greens in the spirit of a healthy lifestyle. I'm going to be making a greens and meatball soup, which is kind of similar to Italian wedding soup with my own little spin on it, and something called Garduna sandwiches. My grandmother used to make these for my father's wrestling team, and I felt like they were there on the table at every gathering looking like little green grass patties. And I've just really taken a liking to them, and I wanted to share them with you. Gardunas are traditionally made with an ingredient called burdock. I couldn't find that here. I consulted with Wegmans, where I do my shopping, and they could get it for me in 8 days, but I decided to substitute with a Swiss chard, so that's what we're going to be making today. I'm going to go ahead and get started on the soup by, I have some heat on this pan here. I'm just going to saute some onions and garlic and a little bit of extra virgin olive oil. As you can see, we are working with a very old stove here, so the cooking temperatures are never really exact. It's always a little bit of a guessing game. I'm going to let that oil heat up a little bit before I hit the garlic and onions in it. And then the other stuff we're going to be putting into the soup today is I took fennel bulbs, sliced them and julienne them into fine pieces. I'm going to saute them a little bit after the garlic and olive oil. We've got some white wine. Instead of just using basic chicken stock, I like to combine the chicken stock with the vegetable stock. I think vegetable stock really gives you some other flavors that you're missing in the chicken stock, like green pepper and tomato. It just, to me, it just gives it a better flavor. A traditional Italian wedding soup calls for escarole. Today I'm going to be using endive, and I have cleaned all the grains because that is a major part of the process, is just getting the stuff clean. So I've already done all of that, chopped it up into small pieces so that this all goes very quickly for your viewing pleasure. Okay, so take a little bit of garlic, a little bit of onion, Just want to mix that around a little bit. You don't want the onion to burn in there, or the garlic, rather. And you just want to cook these until it gets soft. Again, a little bit of a guessing game, but you want to keep your eye on it. Just going to add a little bit of black pepper. What I've learned most in cooking classes that I've taken is how to season ingredients properly. It's something that you just have to get in the habit of doing, and you really see a difference in the flavor in the foods. Okay, so that's doing pretty good. I'm going to put some of the julienne fennel in there. I really love fennel, so I'm going to use all of it today. And again, you just kind of want that to get a little soft, so I'm going to let that go and cook for a little bit. So while that's getting started, I'm going to go ahead and mix my batter for the gardenia patty. So again, as I said, I'm going to be substituting Swiss chard today. I've already boiled these in water, cleaned them, obviously, de-stemmed them, and just so you know what that looks like, I saved an extra couple of pieces. This is Swiss chard. When you're using burdock for this recipe, it's funny because you're really just only using the stem part of the green. And just to give you a little story and history on it, burdock is something that's grown in the springtime. So you can find it, especially it was used, I think, a lot in Europe. It's still used in Asia today. So you can find it in other countries a lot easier than here. I find the best way to find it is really in farmers markets and things like that. So, but when you're using burdock, you're just, the stem is relatively fibrous, but more like celery. So you're shredding that, cleaning that, but today in Swiss chard we're just using the leaf. So you just want to de-stem it by just cutting out most of that middle. So I just took these, threw them in the sink, filled it with cold water, got them really clean, shook them to get the soot and the soil off. And then I just took them and folded them as you cut any really herb, folded them up and sliced them with a knife. Threw them in the... So when you drain these, you want to drain them in a colander, let some of the water run out, and then I always run them through the cheesecloth. Just take a fairly large piece of cheesecloth, put the greens in it, and just wring it dry. Get as much of the water out of it as you can. I'm going to go back over to the soup here. Things are softening up nicely. I'm going to go ahead and start adding my stock. So again, I'm making a larger quantity of this soup, so I'm going to use about 3/4 of the vegetable. Some of the chicken stock. Stock is clearer in color. That's why I like to use it. It's also not seasoned very well, so it allows you to use your own seasonings. It's giving off a little bit of a brown color, which you'll see that clear up a bit once it reduces. What I've done here is I've rolled tiny little meatballs. This is a greens and meatball soup, so it contains pasta, a little bit of meat, and the greens. So what you want to do is just take some ground beef, season it to your taste, and just roll tiny little meatballs that I'm going to dump in here raw because I'm going to end up bringing the soup up to a boil anyway. So it's going to cook the meat, and then once it simmers down, it will retain some of the flavors that I'm trying to capture in the soup. A little bit of white wine. And then to get it a little clearer, I'm going to put some water in it. A little bit more. So I'm going to bring the temperature up and bring this all up to a boil. Another thing I've learned the most is the importance of tasting throughout your cooking process. Okay, this will probably take a little bit to come up, so I'm going to head back to the patties and work on the batter here. You're really forming a batter for these, similar to like making pancakes or any kind of fritters. I'm going to crack 3 eggs into the dish. You just want to scramble them just a little bit. Scramble them up a bit, hit them with some salt and pepper. And again, this is just a season to taste. When I'm trying new things, I like to follow somewhat of a recipe, but in my general cooking style, I'm really just making dishes as I like them, and hoping others do too. I'm going to add some onion salt here. I'd normally use onion powder, just don't have it today. And a little bit of garlic powder. I think the powders work best in these rather than the fresh herbs because you are frying them up into patties and you don't really want to bite down into that onion and garlic, but you do want it to get the flavor. So I've added the Swiss chard. I'm just going to mix it up. You can see it's a little clumpy from going through the cheesecloth, so you just want to work it a little bit to make the consistency a little smoother. Here I have some flour, a little bit of baking powder, and breadcrumbs. The baking powder is great for giving it just a little bit of fluff. Otherwise, as you'll see, these are great tasting patties, but not the best to the eye. So I'm just going to add that as I need it. With the raw egg, obviously I'm not going to stick my finger in and taste this, but I just made them last night, so I know what I'm looking for. Add some more of this. Today I'm going to be putting, I've decided since I'm feeding a few people, I'm going to be making a couple of patties, putting it in this ciabatta bread that I bought, and then just slicing some fresh mozzarella cheese on top. Keeping the flavor simple. The patties will speak for themselves, so I don't want to add too much more onto the sandwich. Okay, that batter's looking pretty good. I'm going to go ahead and turn this burner on. Medium-high heat. Again, I'm going to add some olive oil. Generous amounts of olive oil for this since I'm frying. We're going to let that heat come up. Again, it takes a little bit longer on this stove. This is doing fine here. Once that starts to come up to a boil, I'm going to end up adding the meatballs and the endive, sticking the lid on to somewhat steam these greens, and then just seasoning to taste. The pasta will be added at the end for the finish of the soup. What I'm going to do also is bundle some herbs together that I want to get the flavor out of for the soup, but I don't necessarily want them loose in the soup. I sauteed the garlic in the beginning. I was a little bit conservative with it so that I could add more cloves into the bag. I stuck some thyme in here and a little bit of parsley. Just stuff that I had, flavors that I enjoy, and hopefully will taste right in the soup. So you want to wrap it in a little bit of cheesecloth. I always use twine to tie it together, just drop it in there. So with the string attached, it's very easy to retrieve after you're finished with it. Just cut that down a little bit. There is a formal name for this, and I did learn it, and it's just escaping me right now. So I'm just going to call it an herb bundle. Tie it together with the string and just drop it in. I'm just going to go ahead and add a little bit more water to the soup. And to bring it up to a boil a little faster, the stove, I'm just going to throw a lid on it for you. This temperature's coming up a bit. Last thing I'm going to add to the gardunas is some grated Parmigiano-Reggiano cheese. Cheese makes everything taste better. I think I'll add just a little bit more. Okay, so since this pan is hot, I just added a little bit of chopped garlic to the pan for flavor. We're going to go ahead and drop these in. I'm going to turn the oven on just to keep the patties warm once they're done, since I am serving lunch today. I'm going to drop these in I just kind of take them with my hands, drop them in, flatten them out a little bit. They don't need to be perfect circles by any means, but you don't want them too thick. Just going to add to this one. I want them a decent size since I'm lining them up in the sandwich. I figure I might get 3 or 4 out of this. Since we added breadcrumbs, these will brown a little bit. That's when you'll know they're done, ready for flip. Just like anything else you're pan frying, you want it to brown off just a little. Okay. These are going to take a couple of minutes per side. Go ahead and let them. While these are frying and my soups are coming up to a boil, what I'm going to do is I'm going to serve some side salads.
I'm going to make little mixed greens in a radicchio cup. I love radicchio because it's beautiful in color. It ends up being a nice presentation on a plate for just a tiny little side salad, mostly as garnish. I'm just going to take a little cup I just peeled off right from the ball, pack it with a moderate portion of spring greens. And today I'm going to add some wild blueberries. I really like dried fruits in my salads. Dried fruits and nuts always seem to make it in the salads that I make. I'm going to put some dried blueberries in there along with some pine nuts. Just sprinkle in, and then I'm just going to make a very simple dressing for these. And the cheese I'm going to use today is ricotta salata. It's got a very mild, salty flavor. Not quite as flavorful as feta cheese, but the same sort of eye appeal and consistency. So there we go with that. I have made 3 other ones here on the plate. I'm just going to add this to it and then make a very simple vinaigrette. There are my little cups. Check on this stuff. Now for the vinaigrette, I'm going to be using, I just have a little bit of chopped thyme in the bowl. I like thyme in salad dressings a lot, so I'm going to do the chopped thyme. I've added some salt and pepper already. I'm just going to do a little bit of a red wine base. Stick a little bit of red wine. Take the juice of a lemon. You squeeze it in, you want to squeeze it face up. It's a little messy, it runs all over your hands, but it's a sure way to usually not have the seeds fall in. I'm going to take this one out. A little bit more in there. Okay, with this you can use, just grab a whisk. I'm going to add a little Dijon mustard, just a little squeeze. Well, that's a little more than a squeeze. That's okay. Add it in, get these flavors going together, and then you're just going to drizzle in some olive oil. A little trick that I usually use is just to wet a paper towel just a bit. It'll hold your bowl in place a lot better. Just going to give this a little taste. Really needs a lot more oil. And then, of course, season to taste. And that should be good. Okay, back to the sardinas. See how they're coming along. You want to just check the bottoms ever so slightly. See how that's browning off a bit with the garlic there. I'm going to go ahead and flip them off. let them cook about the same amount of time. Okay. Soup is coming up to a boil. I'm going to go ahead and drop the meatballs in. And drop the endive. Just want to give it a little stir. You'll see how quickly the meatballs will float to the top once they get brown. I'm going to stick the lid back on to soften the greens. So once the soup is up to a boil, you want to let it there just enough to cook the meat. And again, they're already cooked. They're already floating to the top. They cook almost instantly. They're so small little balls. I'm going to turn it down to low and simmer the soup over low heat. I'm going to leave, I just tested the greens. They're still a little bit tough. I'm going to throw the lid back on and just let them soften up. And so this soup is pretty much done. It's going to simmer for 15-20 minutes. I like soup to simmer longer. I like to smell it, you know, a little bit before lunchtime. But we're going to go ahead and serve it today once we pull the bag out and add the pasta. Simmer it just enough time to let me finish everything else. So here we are with the Gardunos. You'll see they're a very bright green in color. There's a lot of iron in these veggies, great fiber, and just a really good taste. Unique taste. It's just not something you're going to see very much. Even vegetable patties, they're just different. So these are going pretty good. I'm going to get the bread sliced and start assembling the sandwich a little bit. Just going to take the roll of ciabatta, slice it, and I'm going to keep this sandwich very simple. Just going to line up the patties with a little, got this beautiful piece of fresh mozzarella. Just going to slice that up, throw that on top with a little bit of olive oil, salt, and pepper as needed. Go ahead and give some generous slices. Okay, so that's going to be ready to go. I'm going to drizzle these with olive oil at the last minute. When the fritters come out, the Gardunos, we're going to let them rest just for a little bit on a plate that I have here with paper towels. You're going to want some of that oil to soak up. You're not going to want to bite in to a mouthful of oil. So I think they're good to go. I'm going to take them out, let them rest on the paper towel, turn the heat off. Okay, so this is still simmering. We're going to add in the pasta and serve it. What I'm going to garnish this with is I've got a little bit of flat leaf parsley here, Italian parsley. I'm just going to chop it up a little bit. I've already washed it. Sprinkle that on the top. And I also, when I'm cleaning and using fennel, I always reserve some of the tips. The hair is what we call it. Just a little bit of garnish. It looks pretty. It's got that frisee sort of look, and you know, just a nice little garnish. So take this parsley, pop it up just a little bit. And go ahead and get these guys drizzled. Typically when I'm adding garnish, and in the catering world we always called it glamour, I always try to pull out of the ingredients that I'm using. So I just garnished with a sliced lemon here and some parsley. Even though I didn't use parsley in these salads, it's an herb spring mix salad, so you're going to get some of that flavor anyway. Okay, so these are good. Okay, so the soup is I left the pasta pretty al dente. I'm going to go ahead and throw this in and just let it simmer down just a little bit, not only to get the pasta warm, but just to cook it a little bit longer. Today I used, I'm not sure what they call these little guys. They're farfadelli, but farfadellini or something. I don't know what the shortened version of it means, but I strategically chose a pasta that would soak up a little bit, some of the broth with every bite. So you want to use something with not just a hole in it, something that's going to let the soup cling to it just a little. I'm going to go ahead and just add all of this in here. So now I'm just going to assemble the sandwich, pour the soup out, and we are good to go. Okay, so I'm going to take the gardunas. I've already sliced the bread. I'm just going to line these up on the sandwich. Take the cheese that I've sliced. We need just a little more cheese. Stick another slice on there. I'm going to drizzle this with olive oil. Just put a little bit of salt and pepper. Take it over here to the cutting board, and I'm just going to cut it into slices. Okay, these are good. So we've got the sandwiches, we've got the salad. Just going to go ahead and plate the soup and call it a day. Ladle this into my soup tureen. Pull out the bag. So now I'm just going to finish this off with a little bit of fresh parsley. Sprinkle some of that fennel on top. And lunch is served. So Rachel, thank you for watching my show today. I hope you enjoyed it. Again, we've got the Garduna sandwich, greens and meatball soup, and just a little side salad in a radicchio cup. Time to dig in.